Fanfic Corner, presented by Jennifer. The Sacrifice for Peace, Part 3. After seeing the destruction and death, the Golden Knight arranged for a small group of her best soldiers to carry Soren back to the room he and Pariah had shared. A full honor guard stood beside him all night, her way of offering her condolences before they left the Sun Dragoness alone with him. After standing at the foot of the bed for a bit, she moved over and sat at his side, gently removing the sheet from his face and looking at him once more. The only solace she had was that he hadn't felt any pain when he died. His face was almost peaceful. But it didn't stop her heart from shattering as she bent down and hugged him close, her nose sniffing frantically. But already he smelled of metal and sunshine. His smell of metal and sunshine had begun to fade away. After a bit, she leant away from his shoulder and gently kissed his cold lips, wishing this was a nightmare. That was when she felt it. First one, then another, and another, and another. They streamed down her cheeks and landed on Soren's face. Tears. Her tears. Pariah sniffed as she realized what was happening, but decided to forget the risk and allow them to fall down her face. She could do nothing to stop them. She pulled away from his lips as she gave into them and let them come full force till the pain in her heart ebbed out of her throat in the wail that only one person could truly understand. She didn't even feel the other's presence as she rocked back and forth in utter heartbreak until a soft hand rubbed the gap between her wings. She turned her tear-stained face to see the queen knelt behind her, a look of compassion on her face. She stared at her for a moment, then gave a small hiccup, hugging the other female tight as she fought back another wail that was building within her. She didn't remember leaving the room or even entering the queen's, but she found herself guided to a chair with heat in the hearth behind her. Sniffing, her sight set on a tapestry of the whole royal family above the mantel, the king and queen smiling as they held a small baby between them. The queen's soft hand stroked the back of her head. "I know," she whispered softly as she knelt beside her again. "Just let it out. It's okay." Pariah sniffed, then hugged her again as she hiccuped between sobs, gripping the back of her dress for a bit. "My queen, please honor me with a request." The queen looked at the young female and nodded, part of her already knowing what she was about to ask. "What is it, Pariah?" "When my fire goes, please, Please lay me beside him. The queen rubbed between her wings, again as she cradled the younger dragon comfortably to her chest. It will be done as you ask. You have my word. Soren groaned as he opened his eyes, trying to think of what had just happened. 1 second he was getting food for the love of his life. The next, pow! He sat up slowly as he rubbed his head. It felt like he had just gotten clobbered over the head with a club. Pariah, he called out, sitting up groggily and sniffing to clear his nose. Suddenly he scrunched it, realizing everything smelt stronger. He wondered if he should tell Skills that the next time he saw him. He grumbled as he walked down the hall, not really paying attention to the startled looks he was getting until he paused, catching a whiff of something familiar. Cinnamon and burning applewood. Pariah, he called out again as he walked into the room beside him. The queen stood holding another dragoness close to her chest, but they separated suddenly as they heard Soren enter, groaning and slowly blinking his eyes in the bright light. As she stared at him, Pariah moved closer, reaching out. Did I died already? She whispered. Soren tilted his head a little, then reached over and gave her a pinch. The dragoness jumped on the spot. Ow, you dumb lump! She yelped. Then she slugged him across the arm, hard. Immediately after that, Pariah froze. If Soren had been wearing his armor, she wouldn't have left a mark. But he wasn't, and he didn't even flinch. Confused, she wiped her eyes and reached over his sleeve, looking for any mark left by her attack or the explosion. There wasn't even a bruise. There was nothing. What just happened? She questioned, her voice still weak from crying, as she reached over and held him gently. Zuiba could only think of one explanation. A keeper? At the call, the shadowy figure once more appeared. He walked forward and smiled as he knelt and gently wiped the remaining tears from Pariah's eyes. Simply put, Sunchild, you did. Pariah and Soren just stared at him, confused, though Soren was still a little unsteady on his feet. The keeper smiled at her. Sun children are taught not to cry, lest they extinguish their fire. But what they have forgotten is that in these tears of fire lies something very powerful. What? Love. That is why I told Viren he could not save his son, and why neither of the royal families could either. Because he did not love him. None love him as much as you. Only you could save him, and that is why your tears have granted him his rebirth. Pariah loosened her hold on Soren. Rebirth? In answer, the keeper snapped his fingers, and they were suddenly transported out to a balcony of the spire, just as the sun began to rise over the horizon. While they stared at it, Soren stepped forward slowly, as if in a trance, and held up his hand to the sun. Behind him, the queen and Pariah just stood dumbfounded as they watched something form on his back. Wings burst out from under his skin. Horns of darkened umber appeared from his scalp, and his nails lengthened into talons, and finally, a tail sprouted from the base of his spine. The keeper only smiled, knowingly as the new sun dragon connected to the ancient primal source. As Soren lowered his hand and looked over the changes, Pariah stepped up behind her lover and gently touched his shoulder. Turning to her, he smiled happily as she took in his new features. There were patches of scales where his stubble was, and his teeth had lengthened, and then she saw those eyes and looked into those eyes and became lost. They were the same ones she knew so well, and yet they held a new fiery warmth that drew her in. She knew at once she had found the thing the elder sun dragons had told her about so long ago. They had said it was a legend, a myth, as if it were impossible. Amongst their people, there was meant to be one individual for each of them, whose spiritual and actual fire was akin to their own, a soul fire bond, and hers was standing right in front of her. Without any hesitation, she gave a small jump and kissed him deeply before they broke apart at a light cough from the queen. Quickly they separated and looked to the amused expressions of the elders. The queen blinked, her eyes holding tenderness and release. "Might I suggest you two fly now? I will relay to everyone that you are not to be disturbed." Pariah bowed lowly, with Soren quickly following suit. She jumped up onto the banister before sailing off, shifting as she flapped her wings and looked back at Soren. "Well, come on," she huffed impatiently. He stared at her, confused by what she wanted. "Wait, what?" Pariah rolled her eyes. "We're gonna fly now." Soren looked like he swallowed a fish. "Fly?" Before Pariah could retort, the keeper snapped his fingers, and Pariah nearly fainted in mid-flap. "Oh, stars, he's hot," she thought, while swallowing the unbidden purr in her throat. Her eyes looked over the new sandy-colored sun dragon in his entirety as he flapped his wings in uncoordinated pattern. But he soon got the hang of it, and she certainly didn't see anything wrong with his appearance. Behind them, the keeper chuckled and waved his hand in the air. "Hurry, Soren. She will not wait forever." The dragon smiled back at the keeper before pumping his wings after Pariah. "Are you sure he'll be all right?" Zuiba asked as the two left to chase each other through the sky. The keeper kept watching the larger male clumsily fly after the far more graceful female. "Certainly, my queen. He has a good teacher." The queen smiled as she watched Soren steady his flight and become more confident. The game soon resumed as the female glided under him, tapping his chin with the tip of her tail. The queen's smile faltered a bit at their playfulness, watching them fly together so happily. As she looked downward, the keeper moved towards her and whispered something softly into her ear. She gasped at the words given to her and felt a hope rekindle. She smiled once more as she watched the younger pair laugh when the male nipped the female's tail tip. It seemed Soren would make a fine dragon after all. And seeing the young dragoness with a smile upon her muzzle, generally filled with joy, the dragon queen felt her faith renewed. Faith that one day she could find the same happiness once more. The keeper's parted words only helped solidify it. "Thank you, keeper," she whispered as the figure disappeared. Turning, the queen went to find her son, his claimed brother, and, most importantly, their elf friend. She would have to be blind to miss the affection between the two. For now, though, she needed to see just who Rayla was before she gave her blessing, regardless of what the keeper told her. She was a mother, after all. The two sun dragons sat on a ridge as they watched the sun rise higher to its zenith. "Soren?" The male rumbled as he nuzzled against Pariah's neck. Are you upset?" He quickly glanced at her. No." He trailed a lick up her neck, making her purr as he rested his head atop hers. "What brought this on?" The female huffed as she shook the male's head off. "You're a dragon now. You can't go back to your family ever again because of me," she murmured guiltily before a sharp nip on her neck caught her attention and made her focus on those eyes again. "Pariah, my mother is gone, and you've seen what my dad and sister have become. My past died with me. I'm not sure what's next exactly, but this is my future now. It's what I make of it." He nuzzled her cheek and wrapped a wing over her. and I couldn't have asked for anyone better to share it with. The dragoness snorted and licked Soren's cheek. I didn't think the mighty crown guard Soren had such a soft spot. She laughed as he rumbled, then squealed as he nipped her neck. He accidentally discovered her secret. And I didn't know the salty sun dragoness was ticklish, he laughed as she turned to glare at him before she broke into giggles of laughter. You dumb lump,